Hey everyone, this is Chris Crazy House, and it's that time of year again. Halloween time is coming up, so I thought I'd talk about some more horror themed things. And for this video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite horror themed anime. Now, for those who know me, know that I'm an animator, but I'm also a big fan of animation, especially Japanese animation, and most specifically Japanese animation from the late 80s, early 90s. That whole cyberpunk, gore, hardcore era of anime. Anime has kind of changed over the years now that it's become mainstream, but the old school stuff is still my favorite. I'm going to be talking about 5 different films you guys might want to check out. And like I said, to me, they're horror themed. I know some of them may be more in the cyberpunk action theme area, but I consider them horror because they have some pretty horrible scenes in them. And they can almost be classified as a horror movie. While I'm talking about those films, I'm going to be doing a drawing of a KISHI. And a KISHI is a creature from African folklore where it's usually a very attractive male or a very attractive female. They have long flowing hair in the back, and they have a monster or beast head that comes out through the back of their hair, and it devours their victim. So they're always very attractive. They can lure you into their lair, but then that beast head comes out and eats you alive. So let's get started on my favorite horror themed anime. And the very first one I'm going to talk about is Blood, the Last Vampire. Now, Blood came out in the year 2000, and it's about a story about a young girl named Saya. Well, you'd think she's young at first because she looks like a schoolgirl, but actually she's immortal because she's a vampire. Actually, one of the last full-blooded vampires. And she helps the U.S. government hunt these other vampire-type monsters called Chiroptera. And it's set in early in or the late 60s, the mid 60s, kind of like almost towards the Vietnam War. And she's helping the Americans hunt down these vampires, and she's a tough chick. I guess a lot of the tough chicks that came later on in live action films are a lot of them are very much based on her. So if you look at Kate Beckinsale in Underworld, she's very much based off of Saya and other anime type characters. My favorite scene in this film, I would have to say, is the scene where Saya, because she's undercover at a school in Japan, and she burst into the nurse's office because these two girls, one was sick, feeling kind of anemic, and so Saya burst into the nurse's office with a katana and slices one of the girls in half. And you find out, like right then, you find out that one of the girls is actually a vampire. You didn't know this before. This is like Saya's a psychopath essentially, and it's a crazy scene because the build up to it. You don't. The movie's kind of slow before then. Like it has a good action scene at the beginning, but then it kind of slows down. And this scene is where everything picks up, and this is where the action picks up for the rest of the film. It's a short film, but very well done animation wise, and theme and the tone of it was just very well done. And like I said, when she chops that one girl in half, and you see that she's a vampire, and the other girl starts to transform into another vampire and runs away, that's when things really pick up, and it's nonstop action from then on. Very good scene, very good movie, and I will post the scene in the description box for you guys to check out. The next horror themed anime that I'm going to be talking about is GenoCyber. Now, GenoCyber is usually considered more of a cyberpunk type deal, more of a science fiction or science fantasy type film. But for me, I consider it more of a horror film because the GenoCyber is a monster, and the monster does some horrible things, but the monster does horrible things in getting revenge for the horrible things that humans have done. And basically, the basic story is this scientist, he's obsessed with harnessing the power of Vajra, which is kind of a half telekinesis, half psychic type power, and he's kind of harnessed it through his 2 daughters. One who's become, due to his experiments, one has become paraplegic, so the only thing she can move is her head, and she has to have a cybernetic body. And the other one has become mute. Her body works just fine, but she's mute. She can't talk, and that's her. And she's kind of animalistic. Her name is Elaine. So Elaine escapes from this experiment and goes out, and like, of course, the evil corporation is looking for her. she befriends a street kid, and they get into all types of different situations. And by the end, Elaine finds her sister again, and her sister's kind of a jerk, even though she's paraplegic. But I guess that's part of the reason why she's a jerk, is because she's been left that way. Elaine still has her real body. But eventually, what happens is Elaine, with her psychic powers, and her sister, they merge into one being, and that is what becomes the GenoCyber. And it gets revenge on all the evil scientists, the mercenaries, and everyone else that's been wreaking havoc in the movie from the beginning. And I would suggest watching the first two OVAs. The third one is not that great to me. But if you don't like violence against children, don't watch them, especially not the second one, because there's a scene in there, very horrific scene, where it shows these three kids who are friends of Elaine getting machine gunned down by a military-style helicopter. And it's the most brutal scene I've ever seen in animation. So don't watch it if you don't like violence against children. But as far as horror goes, my favorite horror scene is when one of these scientists, I think he's either a scientist or a detective who's kind of investigating this whole GenoCyber thing, he gets caught up and one of the evil scientists captures him, and you just see him get captured and it fades to black, and then it fades from black. He wakes up and he looks down and you see that his body has been completely eviscerated. Like his body's been opened up, you can see his rib cage, and they've taken all of his internal organs out and kind of splayed him out on a bed. And you just see him screaming, and then like it just fades back to black. Disturbing scene, crazy scene, but definitely something worthy of a horror movie. The next movie I want to talk about is Demon City Shinjuku, and that's directed by one of my favorite anime directors, Yoshiaki Tawajiri. And this is a story of a young man. His father was killed in a battle trying to save Earth from the demon world, and he goes on this adventure essentially to rescue the world president's daughter, who's trapped in this city called Demon City Shinjuku, which is kind of separated from the rest of the city. There's like a chasm around it, which is caused by a great cataclysm during the father's battle with the evil Rebbe Ra. And I really enjoyed this movie. The first time I saw it was on Sci-Fi Channel back when they used to show anime on Saturday afternoon. And it's one of those ones that's just a memory for me that's always stuck with me. I enjoyed the adventure of it. In my opinion, it's one of those, it's almost like a hero's tale, almost like a knight going to rescue the princess from the evil monster, or the evil knight, the evil wizard. So it's very much in that vein, and that's one of the reasons I like it a lot. And of course, the main character, Kyoya, fights off different types of demons and monsters. Probably one of my favorite scenes is when he fights this giant spider monster that has like this claw for a hand. And Kyoya has a very strange weapon. He has, essentially, it's just a kendo stick. But because he can channel his life and chi energy through that stick, it has more power than a sword. So something I definitely recommend checking out. The opening scene is one of my favorite animation scenes, and just my favorite animation scenes I've ever seen in my life. I just love it. I know it's not the greatest animation, but I love the way it looks, the tone of it, the different colors that they use, that nighttime color scheme that Kawajiri uses. Very well done. And I'm going to post a link to that in the description box. Next one is Vampire Hunter D, and I'm talking about the original one that came out in 1985. I know more people are familiar with the one that came out that was actually directed by Kawajiri, and this is no disrespect to Kawajiri. I like his movie, the Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, but the original is my favorite. Maybe it's more of a nostalgia thing, because I also saw this one. I saw this one actually on Cartoon Network back when Cartoon Network first started. They used to play anime late at night, and that's when I saw it. But it was edited. They edited the hell out of this movie. It wasn't until later on when I got it on DVD that I got to see the movie in its full animation, in its full context with all the different violence. But one of the reasons I love this movie is just the tone of it. Even the way it starts out with that castle in front of a giant moon. It's just beautifully done, and just the style of that old, and it's the 80s type of anime, but kind of modernized and brought with that darker tone. So stuff that you've seen in other different anime during that time, but very dark. Even so dark in some scenes, it's hard to see some of the characters. You can just kind of see their outline and their silhouette. but very well done. I just like the animation style. Uh, but it has that classic horror style and classic horror feel to it. And plus, of course, you got vampires and werewolves, and Count Magnus Lee actually kind of looks like Christopher Lee's version of Dracula. So it harkens back to that old school Universal Hammer horror type deal, but also in a new way. Also, the story takes place in the future as well. So just all around, I just love the way that movie looks and the way it feels. And probably my favorite scene is when D escapes from the three sisters. I guess they're like snake sisters who are draining his life force. He escapes from them and then rescues Doris. And he's kind of leaving the castle. And he's just tearing stuff up. He slices this witch in half, kills the three sisters. He drains their blood. Then like he escapes on the bridge, and there's this giant monster. I guess it's like a golem or just a giant. He winds up killing that guy. It's just very well done, and one of the best scenes in the movie. Very action packed. And just like I said, the whole movie is great. The animation is great too. And number one on my favorite horror themed anime list is the very controversial Legend of the Overfiend. And I saw this one, I rented it from the video store when I was very young. I guess I was like 13 years old, and I found it in there. And I guess it was supposed to be in the adult section, but I was able to rent it anyway. And it gets a lot of flack for being bringing in the age of tentacle hentai or tentacle rape type anime, but the movie is more than that. It has a story to it. I know it has sex scenes in it, but there's way more to it than just that. And the basic story is about a young kid from the beast world named Amano Jaku. He comes to the human world, and he's looking for the Overfiend, which is like a god of all gods that's going to merge three worlds: the world of humans, half men, half beast, and the world of demons. And he finds it in this young kid named Nagumo, and it's just a whole bunch of intrigue going on with Nagumo being in love with this young girl named Akemi, and you kind of see how the relationship gets messed with and toyed with. And of course, the guys from the demon world don't want this Overfiend to merge the three worlds. They want everything to stay the way it is. So of course, they want to try to kill Nagumo, and they create their own creature from the human world, and this character called Nikki, who was bullied. Who used to be kind of like Nagumo. He was bullied as well, but even worse so. He becomes a monster as well. So a lot going on there. Lots of really horrible horror graphic scenes. One of the craziest scenes is when Nagumo, before he becomes the Overfiend, he gets hit by a car, and you see his face in the hospital. He just looks like it looks like an actual car wreck. His face looks just horrible. And probably one of my favorite scenes, action-wise, is just the fight scene between Amano Jaku and one of the princes from the demon world, Sui Kakaju. Just the fight scene is very awesome. It's that you've seen it in anime nowadays. It's almost passe, but back then it wasn't as done that well. So back then, just to see this kind of fight scene was great. You're fighting all through the city and in the air. This is before Dragon Ball Z. Very well done scene, and like I said, I would recommend anyone watching the first one, the first Legend of the Overfiend. There's 4 films, but watch the first one. That's the best one. That's well done and very good as far as fantasy, sci-fi, and horror mixed together, and some black humor as well. So feel free to check it out, and I'll post maybe a scene or two from that in the description box. So that's my favorites as far as horror-themed anime, guys. I want you guys to let me know what you guys think of the list. Let me know which animes that have the horror theme or just violent or gorish themes from the 80s, if you like those ones, or if you like some of the new ones that maybe I don't know about. Feel free to put the names of those in the comments section, or put a link maybe in the comments section to a video on YouTube, and I'll check it out. Yeah, because I'm always looking out for real fun anime out there, or whether it's old or new. There's always something that I wouldn't mind checking out, and there's probably more I could add to the list, but I just want to keep this top 5, and let me know what you guys think. And I'll be back again. I want to do another video about my favorite horror themed video games, and that one's going to concentrate more on the retro games out there. I might have to do another one that focuses on modern games, but for right now we're staying retro. Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.